What's up, guys? It's your host, Tucker Merrihew, and this is episode number 35 of the Real Dealz podcast. We're doing a video episode this week. We didn't have time to do an audio episode, but I've got a good video episode for you. So stick around, watch it. I know you'll get something out of it. I'm going to address 3 questions that we got from people within the Deal Finders Academy, and some things that we've been addressing with people in there that I think would be good for the rest of you guys out there in listener land to also hear and kind of absorb, and as I whack the paper here, and try and implement into your business. So the first question that I want to address is the 70% rule always applicable? And so for those of you that aren't familiar with the 70% rule, basically a lot of gurus preach you have to buy properties at 65 or 70% of after repaired value minus the repair costs. And I would tell you, in this market, throw that out the window completely. Do not even think about it. 2 reasons. One is, when you look at projects, you want to focus and you want to sell them to your rehabbers based on the amount of profit they could make. Forget percentages. Don't even think about it. Some rehabbers will do a project to make 20 grand. Some rehabbers will do a project to make 15 grand. Some rehabbers will do a project if they make 40 grand. So you have to know what your buyer's threshold is, and then you have to qualify the property, get an accurate count of repairs, and then sell it based on how much profit is in the property and not based on percentages. In addition, if you're shooting low and being conservative, you're probably not going to get a deal accepted because it's a fairly competitive market right now. So really throw that rule out and focus on net profit at the end of the day, and that's the number you sell to your rehab buyer. And so think about that. That's something to think about. The other thing too is that a lot of rehabs that are happening right now are add-on type rehabs where people are adding square footage. So the 70% rule doesn't apply at all to that, because you don't know what people are going to do, how much square footage they're going to add, and so that's a way that people are able to pay a lot closer to retail for a house, add square footage that they're building at around, let's say, $100 a square foot or more, and then sell it for $300, $400, $500 a square foot. So they're creating their margin based on adding that square footage to those smaller 2-bedroom, 1-bath homes that now become 4-bedroom, 2.5, 3-bath homes. So something to think about. Obviously, the 70% rule doesn't apply at all to that either. So in this particular market, I would just throw that rule out the window, and you're going to have a lot more success, in my opinion. Question number 2 that we have comes from one of our Deal Finder members, and they wanted to know a little bit more about transactional funding, what it's used for, when it's used. Right now, based on the market, in most of your markets around the country, transactional funding is almost an obsolete tool. It can be used from time to time, but not nearly as much as it used to be. The whole idea behind transactional funding was kind of birthed during the kind of low-hanging fruit, lots of REOs, lots of short sales era. And the reason being is because you as an investor would go tie up a short sale or an REO, get it negotiated, and part of the purchase agreement restriction is that you cannot assign that contract. You actually have to close in the name that's on the contract, being you or your company. So if you're flipping it immediately to somebody, you can't just flip the paper. You actually have to close on it. So at that point, transactional funding companies were birthed, and what they did is they gave you the money that you could then close on those properties and then immediately resell them to your end buyer who was going to rehab the property. Now, over time, the banks got smart and they started putting in deed restrictions on both REOs and short sales that said, hey, you can't resell this property for at least 30 days or 60 days. Sometimes they were terrible restrictions. And so in cases like that, transactional funding couldn't work because transactional funding was only meant to be like a 24-hour loan max. You buy it one day, you sell it the next, you buy it and sell it the same day. So right now, transactional funding is not used nearly as much as it used to. I actually used to do some transactional funding for other guys in town here that were needing that type of service, but rarely does anybody actually need it anymore. The only time that you would absolutely need transactional funding now would be maybe a case like that if you did just by happenstance get an REO tied up at a great deal and there's no deed restriction, or a short sale, but there aren't many of them out there anymore, so probably very low likelihood of that. The only other time would be if you get a deal under contract for such an amazing deal and for whatever reason you don't want your end buyer to see how much money you're making, and it's worth it to you to bring in transactional funding so that they buy it from you at the previously agreed upon price. Excuse me. So generally, when we sell our wholesale deals, the people that buy them from us know exactly how much we're making, whether it's a huge assignment fee or whether it's a smaller assignment fee, because at the end of the day, we're selling them a deal that makes them X amount of dollars, and that's how we pitch it to them. And so they sign off on the fact that they're going to make X amount of dollars, and they don't really care about how much we're making, especially in this market when there's so little inventory for most rehabbers to actually buy and work on. So having us to deliver them deals that just land right in their lap without them having to do a whole lot of work, they're not really in a position to bitch and moan about how much we're making. They're just happy to have something that's going to make them the amount of money that they're okay with to sign on and do the project. So transactional funding does exist. Iron Bridge Lending, who we've kind of pushed for all your hard money needs. I know that I'm sure that they can do it. Obviously, it's case-by-case basis because there isn't a whole lot of it anymore. They don't have a whole page on their site dedicated to it, but they understand it. I know that they can do it. If you need transactional funding, reach out to them, talk to them about it. I'm sure they can set up something for you. Generally, transactional funding costs anywhere around 2 points for quick money. Some more, some less, but that's probably a good basis for calculating your costs. So hopefully that gives you a good explanation as to what transactional funding is, how it was started, and where it's used now in today's market. The next thing that I want to talk about is skepticism in today's market. And this is a big topic because this really plays into the fact that when you market direct to homeowners, which is what you need to learn how to do very well if you want to actually stick around in this business over the next few years, if you do that, there's going to be at least a certain degree of skepticism that you receive from those people that you're marketing to. So your job as a marketer is to create a marketing piece and a marketing campaign that creates as little skepticism as possible so that your marketing piece solicits less skepticism than somebody else's, which then allows that person that you're marketing to call you over the next guy or over your competition. So, for example, if you're sending out standard yellow letters on something like this and it just says, I'd like to buy your house, Joe Smith. That's it. Phone number, no return address. You can see how if you were in the homeowner's position and they have a highly desirable home in a highly desirable neighborhood that would be good for a fix and flip, that they're probably getting a few different letters, things like that, but you could see how they would be a lot more skeptical to get a letter like that where they have no idea who Joe Smith is. They can Google him, there's no Joe Smith, they can't find you, versus getting, a letter maybe like this, the same letter, where somebody has, their full name, their business name, their phone number, the address of their business, maybe even a business card, something like that. And you can even take that a lot further, which we talk about in the Deal Finders Academy. But you want to try and limit skepticism, because if people are skeptical, they're not going to call you. Or if they do call you, they're going to be incredibly defensive, and it's going to take a long time to get them from the defensive side to the I want to do business with you side. So I would suggest really thinking about that when you're marketing direct to homeowners, and think about being in their position, and would you be skeptical if you got that marketing piece? And if you would, then maybe make some tweaks to it, do some different things so that you can limit that amount of skepticism, which ultimately should increase the number of deals that you're able to put under contract. So hopefully that's a good episode for you guys. I addressed 3 things that I think are really important to today's market. So go put those to work in your business. This is episode number 35. I'm your host, Tucker Merrihew, signing off till next week.